You may have heard that the constrictor hitch is the strongest knot in the world, and I would probably tend to agree with that. There are a couple of other knots that once they are set and tied, they're actually a little bit tighter than the constrictor hitch, but once you set this knot and tighten it up, it is almost impossible to get it undone. It grips so incredibly tightly that you usually have to cut it off. But what if you wanted the same gripping power of the constrictor hitch, but you didn't want to have to contend with not being able to get it undone? Well, that's where this hitch comes in. And in my opinion, it's one of the reasons why it kind of makes it better than the constrictor hitch, because you get the same holding power, but you don't have to contend with not being able to get it untied. So first, let's tie the constrictor hitch. We first start by going over our rail, and then we're going to go another wrap around the rail, crossing to the left. We're going to bring our working end out in front, and now all we have to do is lift up on the X here and tuck our working end underneath that X, and then dress the knot out, pull them in opposite directions. Now I don't want to do that too tightly because it will be virtually impossible to get it undone if I set this too tightly. Now, the constrictor hitch is a fantastic knot because it does hold so incredibly well. But what if you wanted the same attributes from the constrictor hitch, but you didn't want to have to contend with not being able to get it undone? Well, let's talk first of all about why the constrictor hitch is so incredibly effective. And that's because it is locked with two different locks. So the two crossing turns actually lock down on the working end of the rope, and once you have set this with a lot of force, it is virtually impossible for any of that to wiggle free, and thereby the knot stays intact and doesn't come undone. So now let's pull this apart, and we're going to tie the Sailors Hitch. Now the Sailors Hitch is very, very similar, and we start off the same way. We go over a rail to our right, then we go and cross over the rail again, this time going left, and come out the front just like in the constrictor. Now instead of just passing directly underneath of our X here, now we're going to come around the back side of our pipe. We're going to lift up our X, and we're going to tuck the working end under the X in the opposite direction. Now we can pull everything together, tighten everything up, and we get the same effect. We have the two wraps that lock down the working end, thereby keeping it in place. Once you set this one, you can pull it in multiple directions, 90, doesn't really matter. It just does not come undone. Now the beauty of this one though is that once the pressure is released, you can, because of the way we wrap this, you can just pull this back down and the whole thing comes completely loose. So it is you get the same holding power of the constrictor, but you do not have to contend with not being able to get it undone. So once you set it, that thing locks in there incredibly tightly. And this is especially useful if you're tying cargo down on where you have rails, so that you set your anchor point with this Sailor's Hitch. It's just not going to come undone, and then you can easily release the whole thing. This is the Sailor's Hitch.